Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. This is a testimonial episode, and this is Water Expands Upon Cooling, episode 13. Oh my gosh, we're in episode 13. So there's plenty of 22 degrees. The midheaven is on 22-degree Leo, ascendant in Scorpio, and this is Mercury day, Mercury hour. We have Mars on the 22nd degree of Taurus applying to Uranus, and the moon is on the 11th degree um, of Virgo. So, an ode to the 22nd degree, as those of you who are watching already know, um, totally not explanatory of this face because I'm just so used to tend to that. And so, 22nd degree is the degree of murder. And for me to honor it, I do something in relation to that. So today began to watch Cold Case. I will put it in the link, and as usual, as I did with when Venus was on the 22nd degree of Cancer, I look at what is the chart when a certain episode appears even in my algorithm. I talk about this teaching in my previous episode when I talk about looking at the current chart to solve a cold case. And as I'm beginning to look at the cold case, I'm thinking about, okay, what is going on? Mars 22 is applying to Uranus. And that immediately, intuitively, and I want to talk about the tool of intuition. And when you talk about anything in your life, but definitely when you talk about solving whether cold cases or hot cases, and this is pay attention to what comes in your mind. What does this remind you? What is the thought? Because that may be related, okay? And astrologically, it is. And so the thought I had in my mind, it was a woman that was, yes, murdered by a man that was of different kind of racial or socioeconomic status that was different to her, like what people consider more oppressed, I don't know. And immediately that brought back a story. That was when I was in between two houses. And so the story goes like this, and this is my testimonial. I was looking for apartment, and I was channeling my way through, and I reached a certain yard. I go and look in the yard, and then a man's like, "Hey, don't like, what are you doing in this place?" I'm looking for apartment, and this is in villages where, for American, it would be dumbfounded. It's villages where they have, let's say, the house, the family house, and then they rent the rest of the units. So seeing the place would not be considered trespassing. That's very important. It's different culture. It was in Israel. And I talked to the person. I was like, I'm looking for an apartment. So, oh, come drink coffee with me. And there is a show about in the TV about an organization called Lava, which basically, if a woman would marry an Arab man, then this organization would take her away. And the man that I'm sitting next to, the owner of this house, which I didn't know was head of crime organization, but I didn't know that. so, um, and so he began to speak to me, and uh, he is of origin of countries that are, I think, North African, and um, and I'm half Israeli, half Dutch. And so he talks to me, and as we watch this TV, he tells me, he tells me, okay, he didn't do anything to me. He tells me that the women, let's say in Israel, the let's say, men that came from countries like the Maghreb, okay, they would on purpose date women of different race or origin. There was like Ashkenazi Jews. Haven't Jews suffered enough, right? But this is just the Jews. And they would treat horribly to the women, okay? They would rape the women, they would beat the women on purpose. And that was kind of like the way to express their dominance over whatnot. Like I'm this person who grew up like lefty, total links, and I've watched this, and a man tells me there's no interest. We're just watching this show about this organization that takes women away from Arab people, Jewish women away from Arab people, and so I'm hearing this from the man. Okay, I'm hearing this from him. And so immediately I was like, hey, that's what happened to this woman. Because Mars is applying to Uranus, and Uranus, unfortunately, that can entail stuff like rape or in 22 degrees murder. And what uh, with Uranus, there is some sort of a rebellion aspect to it. And so the motif, okay, just the last thing you want to do if you want to get liberated, because if you mistreat the women, you know, but the motif here could immediately be such motif that is the use of trying to get to seduce the woman that is from different origin and to take your rage on her, and that why was the woman murdered. And this is unfortunately something that happens. Very weird motif, okay, very undermining of the self, but this is about understanding that those things exist. And um, yeah, as you know, we see right now a lot of discourse around these topics, um, where it's been kind of normalized to do that, um, which of course is only taking humanity. Because why? And I want to tell you why it's normalized to do that from a vantage point of a weapon dealing. Because if the objective is to perpetuate war, then the more people fight and the more reasons they have to fight, then the more money rolls to the pockets of the people who profit off of this fight, and they got dividends to the church. So not the church is like something wrong with Christianity. It's more about the Vatican and what was the Inquisition. Um, and so for even Christianity, they have a desire for people to go back to Christianity, and they stir up a conflict with Islam in this way. But when the people play to that conflict, then not the people win, okay? Um, and so this is, and you should have seen, I would put the episode, I'm still me watching, we've put the episode, you should have seen the woman. It's like she's the most nourishing, nurtured, like the last thing you can do, you want to do as a man for a woman like this is to mistreat her or God forbid murder her, right? Which was the case. It's like that's a person who's completely not only like naive and innocent, but they're completely loving. So that's so silly to do that, but this very likely was ordered um, from these people because that serves financial gains of weapon trading for to fight the people and legitimizing in this way they practice, because later when there is a war, then they are going to do that to people and they would be traumatized for the rest of their lives. They would croak, they would take tons of drugs, which is money, um, and have PTSD, because PTSD has a lot to do with that thing shouldn't have happened, okay? And when you're at war, this is why it's so important to allow for disobedience of illegal orders, because at war, and I know this from veterans, and also veterans that healed, and veterans that said, because I don't feel guilty, I don't have trauma. Whereas if you did something like you raped someone or you had to do illegal orders, then more difficult. Um, but it's also to understand that Boko Haram is not just something that happens in Africa. Our leaders are basically the expandable children that they didn't manage to kill, um, and this is, uh, of course, way more intricate. Yes, but we see all kinds of legislation, like in Germany, like in Denmark, that is very reminding of what a Dutch parliament member um, talked about in the end of the 90s, which was just when they began to import the people who would do that. And this is, again, it's not that, yeah, it's not that a person, it's not about racism, it's about awareness that those types of ways to divide society, just like gender, okay? A natural, healthy, sexually healthy man who is attracted, let's say, to women and to men, okay? What they enjoy is when they see what the partner is enjoying. Okay, this is what people would pay tons of money to watch when they would watch porn. And so um, the intricacy of kinks that interfere in that is a result of all kinds of like satanic ritual abuse, all of those divisions, childhood traumas, and whatnot that you see in there. Um, and you see also sexuality, the fantasy world changes upon healing, and that is again, it's not about kink shaming, right? It's about um, understanding for what essentially, even with kink, for you, what you enjoy is for the person that enjoys that. Okay, the point is the joy. The point is the joy in sex. Um, and when you have people who are abusing people, then this is where you get what we see. Okay, it's not natural for men to rape, which is, I think, important for women to know, because we walk around all the time afraid, fearsome, for this, for that. But no, a ton of energy is invested so that a man would not want anything other than your happiness. Man, what's natural to him is want your happiness, whether you're a man, whether you're a woman, regardless of the type of relationship. Um, that's what's natural, okay? But for these types of expandable children, practices that expand onto society and create all kinds of divisions, whether it's racial, whether it's gender, then we get what we see, which is completely unnatural. Okay, rape is completely unnatural. Child abuse, completely unnatural. Murdering women, completely unnatural. Not in any way, shape, or form. It's not just about reason. Of course, it's unreasonable, but it's also not necessarily the nature of people. What is invested is a ton of energy to um, to play on any kind of weakness that one can play on to get people into this situation. And this is where eventually you would see um, kind of that playing out in those themes. And of course, what is the answer to the government legalizing rape is, of course, deportation and rebellion and outthrowing of the regimes, which is what we see today. 1996, I'm going to say it again and again and again. There was in Belgium the sentence for a person who was basically holding a sex trafficking ring of children. And from that point on, you see that in Europe, that the people rebelled. They understood that there is something way more sinister going on here. And it's not just one man who raped all these children and held them. He couldn't, it's impossible, humanly impossible to do this, but everybody swept it under the rug. And then you see Taliban formation, and you say wars, and you see migration, and you see um, those types of violence towards women, but also children. Also, pretty much, as a man, you probably wouldn't want to be stuck in one of those places either. And this is all organized crime um, that is not showing not the true face of whether it's the Maghreb countries or whether it's the European countries, but rather with the face of corruption. Okay, so right now, as Mars is 22 degrees, is degree of murder. As Mars approaching to Uranus, we must also be aware, and we do see all these cases rising. And El Gol, her job is to fix that, because when people behave in this way, okay, if one case, then you can fix it by the community. If God forbid murder, you can fix it by the community. But if the society becomes so oppressed, then what happens is the banks collapse. It's just what you build on. I will dedicate more episodes to explain this. But what we build on, when you build on such corruption, it's falling down. And then what happens is all the people who participated in that usually are expandable. But what we need to do is to stay put and understand that we want to tend to expendable children, and we want to get to the core of where it happens, where it begins, and to create a change there. We have the opportunity, both with Pluto and Aquarius, okay, the 7076, okay, both with Pluto and Aquarius, and with Uranus in Taurus, the 1941, okay. So tremendous changes, like, oh, and that was the Nazis. Well, women got the ability to have bank account after the Second World War. Women got the ability to vote after the Second World War. Men are way happier with happy women, because what the nature of humanity is that people are usually enjoying for seeing people enjoy and sharing joys. When you have love, then you are able to contain that, and when there's something intermixes with that, and this is by design, then it is then that you see all the rage, and that rage being justified with a ton of paradigms that don't mean um, if we talk about liberation, oh, this theme is hot topic. um, Nelson Mandela abolished a lot of the bloodline segregation, decentralized the regime. He was of bloodline of royalty, but not to be a king, and he, like his father, disobeyed the king. Okay, the king in his own community, not a colonialist. Okay, he married a woman from another tribe, and then yeah, he was in jail, but he also learned for what colonialists have to teach, for what they culture, what they have something good to bring, and then what needs to change within the culture. This is why Mandela is a figure that you need to be look into over and over again, because he abolished apartheid. He abolished apartheid. Not raping people, not slaughtering people, no, oh, because you are oppressed and you can murder everybody that's innocent, and like, no, that's not, no. Okay, just like the way you return kidnapped people is not to wait 9 months. And we all know why 9 months, right? It's the time to make a baby. And keep them and torture and kill so many people. It's not the way, but for the people, for when money changes hand, that is exactly the way, because this is 9 months of ammunition, of budgets going in and out. And you would blame the leaders, but the leaders are just the expandable children that they didn't manage to kill. Learn about expandable children. So this is my episode for today, and what I want you to take out from this episode, other than the topic of Mandela, which is very important, the topic of looking at the chart when you want to solve a cold case. This is immediately, this is so powerful in pointing you to the direction of what could be a solution. I would need to see more about like the end of this episode and so on, but also the intuition. Okay, the thoughts that you have, the memories that you have, and this is a psychology tip, by the way. Okay, for psychologists, when you sit at psychologist room, they look at you and they have all kinds of intuitions, and they test what the intuitions, the professional, they would say, well, this reminds me of so and so, this reminds me of so and so, how do you feel about that? And you will find out for the connection, why did they get this intuition? Okay, when they don't know what energy was sitting in a room with me, okay, it was not only offender, it was also certified psychologist. That's why they took him to, is the expandable child that they didn't manage to kill, and then his job was to kill me. And so let's face it, right? So and so he said, I see murderous things, but I don't know if it's from my life or from your life. Okay? And I came to heal, of course, things from childhood, and ruler of my 4th house, which is upbringing, housing, ruler of my 7th house is in the 2nd house, ruled by 9th house, 22-degree Mars. So that Mars rules pretty much all my chart, 22 retrograde, so in Scorpio. And that is, yeah, that's powerful. He's seen the war. You see the things that happens in war. I didn't get why, but I see it relative to me. But was also recruited, very likely to plan the war, and to try to bring people to Nova, to kidnap, to be kidnapped, and so on and so forth. They were doing experiments with kidnapping people, to hospitals. That's basically what happened to me after therapy. But I couldn't say anything, right? And that's another testimonial. So again, pay attention when you sit with a cold case or with something. You will have intuition, you will have memory, and you need to check of where is it coming from. An astrology chart is very useful to connect what comes up in your mind. Why does it come up in your mind just right now? And that is yes, all very relevant. So I don't know about those who are watching soccer. I don't know if Netherlands is. I saw the Thunders yesterday, and that was very exciting. But yeah, that is just something that's going on right now. But also, you see, for these shows, when do you have football? When do you have soccer games? Okay, at worst is very important, but it's already for no, I will say it again. Second World War, they had the ceasefires, and the soldiers in the fronts would play soccer with each other. But then, when they will have to shoot, they would shoot in the air, because once you mingle with people, you no longer want to shoot them so much. Okay, so they had to replace the soldiers. Just so to show you, because people are afraid of World War III. Okay? They were programming people before they were programming robots. And if we tend to expendable children, we will not have to fear AI. So, yep,